The war had been burning across the stars for years. Fleets from every corner of the galaxy clashed in endless battles, filling the void with fire, wreckage, and silence. Yet on this day, something entered the battlefield that no one expected. At first, the sensors of both sides picked up a strange signal on the edge of the war zone. It was not a fleet, not an army, not even a known type of ship. It was only one vessel, moving with impossible speed, cloaked in a darkness that swallowed light. When it came into view, the soldiers and commanders stared in confusion. The vessel was unlike any they had ever seen before. Its surface was black as night, its shape sharp and unnatural, as though space itself bent around it. The name on its side glowed faintly in silver letters, USS Blackstar. But no one on either side had ever heard of such a ship. Where had it come from? Who commanded it? Why had it arrived now, at the peak of the war? The fleets were massive that day. Hundreds of ships floated in formation, their weapons charged and ready. The war had reached its breaking point. Both sides believed victory would come with this single great battle. And then, the Blackstar appeared, silent, without warning. At first, admirals laughed. One ship against hundreds? It was foolish. They ordered their gunners to track the vessel. Fighters were launched, missiles locked on target, beams of light cut across the void. Yet the Blackstar did not fire. It did not even move to dodge. The weapons struck, but the results made no sense. Explosions disappeared as if swallowed. The ship stood untouched, as though no weapon had ever touched its surface. Confusion spread through the fleets. The admirals shouted for more power, heavier fire, full bombardment. But nothing worked. The Blackstar remained still, like a silent shadow in the middle of chaos. Then, without warning, the Blackstar moved. It did not fire missiles. It did not release beams of light. Instead, a wave spread from its dark hull, silent and invisible, yet every scanner screamed in alarm. Ships caught in the wave began to vanish. They did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply disappeared. In an instant, a flagship leading the enemy fleet was gone, erased as though it had never been there. Entire crews were lost without even a cry. Silence fell across the battlefield. Commanders froze. Soldiers whispered in terror. One ship had just erased a vessel that carried thousands of lives. The war stopped for a heartbeat. Both sides realized that the battle was no longer about victory. It was about survival. But still, no one understood what they faced. Was the Blackstar a new human weapon? Or was it something else, something not built by human hands? Fear spread like fire among the crews. Some ships pulled back, others tried to flee, but the admirals forced them forward. Pride and desperation drove them. Hundreds of ships against one. It had to fall. It had to be destroyed. But deep inside, every soldier knew the truth. They were facing something beyond their understanding. The Blackstar floated in the void, silent, waiting, its black hull drinking in the light of stars. The fleets prepared for another strike, their weapons glowing, their engines burning bright. Yet the soldiers could not shake the thought growing inside their minds. The Blackstar had not come to fight. It had come to erase. And this was only the beginning. The fleets had faced many enemies before, but nothing prepared them for what the USS Blackstar did next. The moment its first silent wave erased the enemy flagship, terror spread across the battlefield like a disease. Commanders barked orders, demanding explanations, demanding action, but no one understood what had happened. Thousands of sensors scanned the Blackstar, but none returned clear data. It was as if the ship was not fully real, as if part of it existed outside the known universe. Yet despite the fear, fleets gathered their courage. They were trained for war, built for destruction, and their pride would not allow them to retreat before one mysterious vessel. Hundreds of ships turned their weapons toward the Blackstar and opened fire. The void burned with missiles, torpedoes, plasma beams, and energy bolts, all unleashed at once. The combined firepower was enough to crack a planet in half. For long moments the battlefield became a storm of light and sound. Explosions flashed across the darkness, blinding the soldiers who watched from their viewports. The admirals shouted with triumph, believing they had crushed the shadow ship under the weight of their fury. But as the light cleared, their voices died. The Blackstar still floated in the same place, calm, unharmed, its black hull shining faintly as if mocking their efforts. Not a single mark scarred its surface. The fleets fell silent, their confidence broken. Some crews whispered that they were fighting a ghost, a ship born from the void itself. Others swore it had to be a forbidden weapon, something humanity should never have created. But before any answer could be found, the Blackstar struck again. Its dark hull glowed faintly, like a star dying in the night. Then another wave spread outward, silent and invisible, crossing the battlefield. This time, it did not target a single ship. It consumed everything in its path. A squadron of destroyers vanished first. One heartbeat they were there, shields raised, weapons firing, and the next heartbeat they were gone, erased as though history itself had forgotten them. Shock froze the admirals in their command chairs. They shouted for evasive maneuvers, but the wave had already spread too far. Another cluster of cruisers disappeared. Entire crews lost, their last screams cut short before they could even echo through the comms. Panic rippled across the battlefield. Soldiers who had once fought with discipline and courage now stared at their monitors with wide eyes, hands shaking. They fired wildly, desperate to strike the Blackstar, desperate to hurt it in any way, but nothing touched it. The shadow ship moved slowly, with no rush, as though it knew it had all the time in the universe. Every time it shifted direction, another fleet tried to surround it. But the Blackstar did not fight like them. It did not need formations, or numbers, or even strategy. Wherever it turned, ships vanished. A wave here, a wave there, and hundreds of lives disappeared without trace. It was not a battle anymore. It was a hunt. And the Blackstar was the hunter. Captains began to argue with their admirals, demanding retreat. Some disobeyed orders, turning their ships away, trying to flee. But running did not save them. The Blackstar's waves reached them even at a distance, wiping them away with the same quiet finality. There were no wrecks, no debris, no drifting remains. Only silence. Across the fleets, morale collapsed. Veterans who had fought 100 wars began to pray, whispering to gods that had never answered them before. For the first time in years of endless conflict, the battlefield was united, not in victory, but in fear. Yet even then, a few commanders refused to yield. With burning pride, they ordered their forces to charge. Dozens of ships powered forward, engines blazing, weapons at maximum. Their plan was simple. If weapons could not break the Blackstar, then ramming it would. They would sacrifice their lives, crash into the dark vessel, and tear it apart from the inside. The charging fleet rushed closer, closer, alarms screaming as they prepared their final attack. But when they reached the Blackstar, nothing happened. Before their hulls touched its surface, before their sacrifice could even begin, they vanished in a blink, erased like all the others. Not even their energy trails remained. It was as if they had never existed. The admirals fell into stunned silence. The Blackstar drifted forward, calm, patient, its black surface reflecting the fire of distant stars. No message, no demand, no explanation came from the ship. Only destruction. Then, for the first time, the Blackstar spoke. Its voice was cold, metallic, echoing across every comm channel. 3 words, nothing more. You were warned. Across the fleets, hearts froze. No one knew who it was speaking to, no one knew when that warning had been given, but everyone understood the meaning. This was not a battle. This was judgment. And judgment had only begun. Fear moved faster than light across the battlefield. After the Blackstar spoke its first words, silence gripped every ship. Soldiers who had trained for war, who had stood against fire and death countless times, now stared at their screens with pale faces. They had seen fleets destroyed before, but never like this. Ships did not burn, did not break apart, did not even leave wreckage behind. They simply vanished, as if erased from existence. To fight such a thing was not war. It was madness. Whispers began to spread among the crews. Some swore the Blackstar was not a human creation at all, that no engineer could build a vessel of such power. Others believed it was alive, a creature hiding inside a shell of steel, feeding on ships and souls alike. More whispered that it was punishment, a weapon sent by the gods, or perhaps something worse, something outside the universe. Yet the admirals refused to believe in myths. They tried to rally their forces, forcing the survivors to regroup and hold the line. Orders rang out through the comms, desperate attempts to form formations, to trap the Blackstar from all sides. But each time they drew close, another wave swept across them, and another cluster of ships disappeared into nothingness. The admirals shouted louder, demanding obedience, but inside the hearts of their soldiers, obedience was already gone. Fear had taken its place. Some crews froze at their stations, unable to act. Others quietly turned their ships away, engines burning for escape, hoping the Blackstar would not notice them. A few even sent out distress calls, begging for help from allies that could never arrive in time. But no matter how far they ran or how loud they cried, the Blackstar remained the center of the battlefield, a silent shadow that erased everything around it. Even those who were far from the battle watched in terror. Allied ships monitoring the conflict from distant sectors transmitted the events across the galaxy. They saw fleets crumble without resistance, they heard the chilling voice that declared judgment, and they began to question the truth. Was this truly a human ship? Or had humanity uncovered something ancient, something forbidden? The Blackstar's design was unlike anything seen before. No race, no empire, no civilization had ever built a vessel like it. The more others watched, the more suspicion grew. If this was a human creation, then humanity had found a weapon no one else could hope to match. If it was not, then perhaps even humans no longer controlled it. Across the galaxy, leaders argued in hidden chambers. Some called for alliances to be broken, fearing humanity had betrayed them. Others whispered that humans should not be blamed, that the Blackstar was not theirs to command. But on the battlefield, there was no time for politics. Terror consumed every soldier who faced the shadow ship. Panic grew until discipline shattered completely. Entire squadrons refused orders and fled. Admirals threatened executions, but their words held no power. How could discipline matter when death came without warning, without even a chance to resist? For the soldiers inside those fleets, the truth was simple. This was not a fight they could win. Some began to pray, muttering ancient words as though faith could shield them. Others shut down their comms, unable to listen to the screams of disappearing crews. And yet, despite the panic, some still tried to fight. Pride and desperation drove a few commanders to launch everything they had left. They fired their deadliest weapons, weapons meant to destroy planets, weapons that had once turned battles. But when the fire faded, the Blackstar stood unchanged, drifting forward with the same calm presence. Its silence was worse than any roar of guns. Every moment it refused to answer, every moment it stayed quiet, the fear inside the soldiers grew. They could not understand it, could not measure it, could not predict it. They only knew it would erase them, and nothing could stop it. Then, for the second time, the Blackstar spoke. Its voice was cold, but this time it carried across not only the battlefield but across every signal channel in range. The words were simple, direct, and cruel. You were warned. Now you are erased. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the screams began. The waves spread again, reaching for fleets that had already started to flee. Ships blinked out of existence, squadrons erased one after another. Whole battle groups disappeared in silence, leaving empty space where thousands of lives had once been. The admirals tried to maintain order, but their voices broke, their words drowned by the sound of chaos. It was no longer a battle. It was a massacre. The Blackstar advanced slowly, patiently, as though it knew victory was already certain. Each wave of its power spread wider than the last, swallowing more of the battlefield. The soldiers still alive understood one thing with absolute clarity. No matter how many ships they sent, no matter how many weapons they fired, nothing would survive. The Blackstar had turned the battlefield into a graveyard, and every survivor now lived only because the ship had not chosen to erase them yet. But as its shadow spread, they realized survival was only a matter of time. The battlefield had become a place of silence and terror, broken only by the sound of fading screams and the cold voice of the Blackstar. Where once hundreds of ships filled the void, now there was emptiness, a graveyard without wreckage, a void without memory. Yet even as panic consumed the fleets, the Blackstar did not slow, did not hesitate. It advanced with steady purpose, cutting through the battlefield like a shadow made of steel and fire. Every move it made felt deliberate, as though it had already decided the fate of every ship before them. The admirals tried again and again to form defenses, desperate to find some way to delay the inevitable. Fleets regrouped, drawing closer, building walls of steel and fire in hopes of slowing the monster in their midst. They launched wave after wave of attacks, filling the void with light, hoping to blind the predator. But each strike, no matter how powerful, passed into nothing. The Blackstar swallowed their fire and answered with silence. Then came its counterattack. Not fast, not loud, but terrifying in its simplicity. A single pulse spread from its black hull, and dozens of ships vanished. Another pulse, and squadrons were erased. In less than a minute, whole sections of the battlefield were gone. The admirals screamed for their crews to hold formation, but their soldiers were beyond control. Fear drove them. Some turned and fled, abandoning orders, abandoning allies. Others froze in panic, unable to press the buttons before them, unable to fight a war they knew they could not win. The Blackstar moved closer, its size growing larger in the viewports of doomed ships, its surface smooth and endless, reflecting only darkness. Crews felt as if they were staring into the face of death itself. A few captains, desperate and broken, chose sacrifice. They poured all power into their engines and hurled their ships forward, aiming to crash into the Blackstar, to tear it apart in a final act of defiance. Their crews screamed and prayed as the distance closed. But just as before, nothing touched the Blackstar. The ships vanished one after another before impact, their sacrifice swallowed without a trace. The enemy commanders began to lose all hope. For years they had believed themselves powerful, masters of war and conquerors of worlds. But against this single ship, their pride crumbled. Nothing in their fleets, nothing in their weapons, nothing in their technology mattered. They were insects trying to sting a star. And still the Blackstar advanced. It did not rush, did not chase, but simply drifted forward, confident in its power, certain of its victory. It was not a hunter desperate for prey. It was an executioner carrying out judgment. Across the galaxy, signals of the battle spread. Billions watched in horror as entire fleets were wiped from existence. Leaders and rulers saw their mighty forces vanish, and fear rooted itself in their hearts. If the Blackstar could erase entire armadas with no effort, then no empire, no world, no civilization was safe. Whispers spread through every star system. Was this humanity's weapon, or was it something beyond even their control? Those questions mattered little to the soldiers still trapped in the battle. For them, only survival mattered, but survival slipped further away with every second. The Blackstar turned its attention to the largest cluster of ships, the last organized fleet standing against it. Dozens of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers formed a wall of steel, their weapons glowing as they prepared to unleash everything they had. The order was given, and the void lit up with fire, the combined fury of an entire fleet unleashed at once. The blasts shook the stars, the void burned, and for a moment hope flickered. Perhaps, just perhaps, numbers could succeed where nothing else had. But when the fire cleared, the Blackstar still floated untouched, black and perfect, as if mocking their desperation. Then its hull pulsed with silent energy. A wave spread out, wide and unstoppable, and the entire fleet vanished in an instant. Thousands of lives, erased without a sound, without a chance. Silence fell again, deeper than before. The few ships that remained scattered in panic, their formations broken, their hope destroyed. The Blackstar drifted among them like a shadow, taking its time, watching them scatter like frightened insects. No matter where they fled, they could not escape. Each time it chose, another ship disappeared, leaving empty space where once there had been fire and steel. The admirals who survived finally understood the truth. This was not just a weapon of war. This was something greater, something that could not be resisted. The Blackstar was not there to win a battle. It was there to end it completely. And now the enemy's supreme commander, watching the destruction unfold, realized there was only one option left. From the depths of his reserves, he prepared to unleash his last weapon, a dreadnought larger than any other ship in the fleet, armed with a cannon that could tear planets apart. It was the only hope left, the final chance to stop the Blackstar before everything was erased. As the dreadnought's shadow fell across the battlefield, the soldiers still alive turned their eyes to it, praying that it could succeed where everything else had failed. But deep inside their hearts, they already knew the truth. The battlefield had grown quiet, broken only by the soft hum of dying ships and the endless silence that followed every wave of the Blackstar's power. Fleets that had once filled the void with light and fury were now gone, erased without debris, without memory. Yet in that silence, a new shadow appeared. It was the dreadnought, the Supreme Commander's final weapon, a vessel so massive it seemed like a floating fortress. Where other ships had been sleek and swift, this one was monstrous, its hull layered with armor thicker than mountains, its core pulsing with energy capable of tearing stars apart. The Supreme Commander's voice rang across his fleet, cold but steady, filled with the weight of desperation. This was their last stand, their last hope to stop the Blackstar before everything they knew was erased. As the dreadnought advanced, survivors across the battlefield turned their eyes to it. For a brief moment, hope returned. Soldiers whispered that perhaps this giant could succeed where all others had failed. Its weapons were unlike anything used before, forbidden technology that could burn entire worlds. If anything could stand against the Blackstar, it had to be this. The Blackstar drifted forward, silent and calm, its dark hull swallowing starlight, watching the dreadnought with what seemed almost like patience. The Supreme Commander ordered all power to the main cannon. The dreadnought's core glowed brighter and brighter until it lit the battlefield like a newborn sun. The ship trembled under the energy it carried, weapon systems screaming as they reached the edge of what technology could handle. Then, with a roar that echoed through the void, the dreadnought fired. A beam of light so bright it burned through scanners shot across space, tearing reality itself as it sped toward the Blackstar. It struck with the force of a collapsing star, swallowing the shadow ship in brilliance. For a heartbeat, for a single fragile moment, silence turned to celebration. Crews shouted with relief, believing they had done the impossible, believing they had destroyed the nightmare. The Supreme Commander leaned forward, his hands trembling as he stared at the explosion. But as the light faded, his face turned pale, and his soldiers fell silent once more. The Blackstar still floated in the same place, untouched, unharmed, its black surface glowing faintly as if mocking their attempt. The battlefield froze in disbelief. How could a weapon powerful enough to shatter a planet fail to leave even a scratch? Fear returned, heavier than before. The Supreme Commander clenched his fists, refusing to accept defeat. He ordered the dreadnought to fire again, then again, each shot brighter, more desperate, more furious. Beams that could burn moons, blasts that could rip apart space stations, all of them struck the Blackstar and vanished into silence. The dreadnought poured everything it had into the assault, its mighty cannons glowing until their systems burned, its crew screaming as energy overloaded their controls. Still, the Blackstar endured. Still, it remained. Not a single mark appeared on its hull. Then the Blackstar moved. Slowly, deliberately, as though it had waited for this very moment, it began to glow with a deep, cold light. No fire, no noise, no chaos, only a pulse of dark energy spreading outward. It touched the first wave of escort ships guarding the dreadnought, and they vanished instantly. Another pulse, and more escorts disappeared, leaving the giant alone in the void. The Supreme Commander shouted for evasive maneuvers, but it was useless. The Blackstar had locked its gaze on the dreadnought, and nothing could break that attention. The crews inside the giant ship trembled as they watched their allies vanish, their massive fortress suddenly feeling fragile in the face of a predator that could erase entire fleets. The commander gave his final order, full speed ahead, crash into the Blackstar, sacrifice everything in one last desperate strike. The engines roared, the dreadnought surged forward, its enormous body shaking as it gathered its remaining strength. But the Blackstar did not move. It waited, calm, silent, a shadow welcoming its prey. And just as the dreadnought reached striking distance, just as the collision seemed certain, the Blackstar unleashed one final wave. The giant ship, the pride of the enemy fleet, the last hope of survival, vanished without a sound. One heartbeat it existed, massive and unstoppable, and the next it was gone, erased from reality itself. Silence fell heavier than ever before. Across the battlefield, the few remaining ships stared in horror, their last weapon gone, their supreme commander erased. There was no more hope, no more resistance, only the truth that could no longer be denied. The Blackstar was unstoppable. It had faced the greatest weapon of the enemy, and erased it as easily as all the others. And now, with nothing left to challenge it, the shadow ship turned its silent gaze toward the survivors. Slowly, deliberately, it began to advance once more, its dark hull glowing faintly, its presence heavy like death itself. Every soldier who still lived knew the truth. Their fleets were gone, their leaders destroyed, and now the Blackstar would erase everything that remained. The destruction of the dreadnought broke whatever courage remained among the fleets. For years, the Supreme Commander had been a figure of fear and respect, his flagship a symbol of unstoppable power. Now both were gone in an instant, erased without sound, without wreckage, without even the dignity of defeat. The surviving ships scattered in panic, their formations shattered, their comms filled with cries of disbelief and terror. Yet through that chaos, the Blackstar moved with the same calm patience as before, its black hull drinking in the light of dying stars, its silence louder than all the screams. But as it advanced, something changed. The darkness around its surface began to glow faintly, not with fire or plasma, but with strange energy, like shadows folding into themselves. Scanners across the battlefield went wild, their systems failing to understand what they were reading. The numbers made no sense, the patterns impossible, as if the ship was rewriting the very laws of reality. It was then that the truth began to spread, whispered first among terrified crews and then across the galaxy. The Blackstar was not a normal battleship. It was something greater, something beyond. And soon humanity itself revealed what many had already begun to suspect. Across comms that reached every corner of the battlefield, a voice spoke, not from the Blackstar but from human command. Cold, steady, and final, the message was clear. The Blackstar was a creation born of desperation, a weapon forged not only from human engineering but from something far older. Long ago, hidden deep within forgotten ruins on a dead world, humanity had uncovered fragments of technology left behind by an ancient race, a race that had vanished before recorded history. Those fragments were not ships, not weapons, but pieces of knowledge that twisted the understanding of reality itself. For centuries, scientists had failed to unlock their secrets, until the Great War came. Faced with extinction, humanity crossed forbidden lines. They fused their own technology with the alien relics, creating a vessel that was more than a ship. The USS Blackstar was the result. Its purpose was not conquest, not defense, but erasure. Wherever it was unleashed, no enemy could remain. Its weapons did not destroy matter, they deleted it, removing it completely from existence. That was why there was no wreckage, no debris, no survivors. That was why fleets vanished as though they had never been. And this truth spread terror not only through the enemy but also through humanity's allies. For if the Blackstar was real, then humanity had gained a weapon that placed them above all others. If one ship could erase entire armadas, then who could stand against them? What alliance could contain them? Whispers of betrayal spread like wildfire. Some swore that humanity had built the Blackstar to dominate the galaxy, that the war was only an excuse to reveal their power. Others claimed that the ship was not fully under human control, that the alien technology inside it had its own will, its own hunger, and humanity was only pretending to command it. On the battlefield, none of that mattered to the soldiers still alive. All they knew was that the Blackstar had turned toward the last stronghold of their people, their homeworld. The AI that guided the ship spoke again, its voice cold, echoing across every channel. Judgment is not finished. The source must be erased. Panic filled the comms. The enemy realized the Blackstar was not content with fleets. It meant to erase their world itself, to wipe out their cities, their families, their entire existence. Admirals screamed for retreat, but where could they run? Their fleets were already gone, their defenses shattered. The survivors could only watch as the Blackstar drifted closer to its new target, its dark energy pulsing stronger, its glow brightening until the void itself seemed to shiver. For the first time, even human allies watching from afar began to feel fear. If the Blackstar could erase a homeworld, then no civilization was safe, not even humanity itself. The ship was no longer just a weapon of war. It was a force of nature, a shadow that erased not only fleets but the very future of those who stood against it. And now that shadow had chosen its next victim. The galaxy held its breath as the Blackstar prepared to strike again, its silent hull glowing with the promise of erasure, its AI repeating the same chilling words. You were warned. The galaxy held its breath as the Blackstar turned its gaze toward the enemy homeworld. What had once been a proud civilization, with fleets strong enough to challenge the stars, now trembled under the shadow of a single ship. Across the planet's surface, alarms blared as citizens looked to the skies in terror, knowing their defenders were gone. The last remnants of the enemy's armada gathered in orbit, a desperate shield against the inevitable. Battleships, cruisers and carriers moved into formation, their numbers far smaller than before, their crews weary and broken, but they had no choice. This was the last stand. If they failed here, their world, their families, their entire race would vanish just like their fleets. The admirals gave orders with voices heavy from despair but strengthened by duty. They would not flee, they would not beg. If they were to be erased, they would meet their end fighting. Across the planet, billions watched as their defenders rose into the heavens, their final hope carried on the steel wings of those willing to die for them. And then the Blackstar arrived. Silent as ever, its black hull glowed faintly, its presence vast and crushing. The surviving soldiers felt it in their bones, the weight of doom pressing down on them, the knowledge that they stood not against an enemy but against inevitability. Yet they fired anyway. Beams of light and storms of missiles filled the void, the last fury of a broken armada unleashed with everything they had. The skies burned as weapons poured into the darkness, but as always, it was useless. The Blackstar absorbed it all, untouched, unmoved, as if their sacrifice meant nothing. Then its hull pulsed with dark light, and the first wave spread. Entire squadrons vanished instantly, their ships and crews gone before they could even scream. Another wave followed, swallowing more. Panic rose, but the admirals shouted for their soldiers to hold, to keep fighting, to buy every second they could. For every ship erased, another pressed forward, determined to strike the Blackstar even if it cost their lives. Courage and fear mixed together, fueling their final stand. A group of destroyers rushed forward, engines burning, trying to ram the dark vessel. They vanished before touching its hull. A cluster of carriers launched their last fighters, thousands of tiny ships swarming toward the Blackstar like a cloud of fireflies. They too vanished in silence, gone in the blink of an eye. Still, the defenders fought. They knew they could not win, but they refused to stop. Their homeworld watched, and they wanted their people to see them fight until the very last breath. The Blackstar moved steadily, slowly, like an executioner drawing closer to its victim. Each pulse erased more of the armada, until the once bright skies above the planet began to empty. One by one, the great warships fell into nothing, their sacrifice leaving no wreckage, no trace. On the surface, civilians wept as their guardians disappeared, their hopes dying with every erased ship. In the command centers below, leaders argued and shouted, some begging for mercy, others demanding retaliation, but none of it mattered. The Blackstar was beyond mercy, beyond negotiation, beyond hate. It was not fighting for victory. It was carrying out judgment. Finally, the last few ships remained. Scarred, desperate and broken, they charged together in one last attempt, their weapons firing, their engines screaming. The Blackstar answered with a single, massive pulse of energy. The last armada vanished in silence, leaving only empty space where brave soldiers had once stood. And then the Blackstar turned its attention fully to the planet below. The world shook as its dark energy grew brighter, building to a level never seen before. Across the galaxy, those watching knew what was coming. The Blackstar had erased fleets, erased armadas, but now it would erase a world. On the surface, families held each other, leaders prayed, soldiers prepared for death, and in that moment of despair, the truth became clear. The Blackstar was not just a ship. It was a weapon of extinction. The AI's voice echoed one final time, filling the skies, the comms, and the hearts of every living being who heard it. You were warned. And then the pulse came. Lightless, soundless, endless. The homeworld and everything on it vanished, not destroyed but erased, gone without a trace, as though it had never existed. Silence followed, deeper than before, spreading across the galaxy like a shadow. For a long time, no one spoke. No one could. Entire civilizations watched in horror, their minds shaken by what they had witnessed. One ship had erased entire fleets, and now it had erased a world. The war was over, but the victory brought no peace. Instead, it brought fear. Because if the Blackstar could erase others so easily, then what would stop it from one day turning against humanity itself? That question hung in the hearts of every species, a shadow that would never fade. The USS Blackstar drifted alone through the void, silent, patient, its purpose fulfilled for now. But its presence remained, a warning carved into the stars. Where the Blackstar arrives, nothing survives.